The transport ship shuddered as it entered Kepler 442b's atmosphere, its hull groaning under the stress of atmospheric entry. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her daughter's hand tighter as the vessel bucked and rolled through the turbulent descent. 8-year-old Emma pressed her face against the small porthole, her eyes wide with wonder at the alien landscape below. "Look, Mommy. The trees are purple." Emma pointed at the vast forest stretching beyond the horizon, their crystalline leaves catching the light of the binary suns. Sarah managed a weak smile despite her churning stomach. The colony ship Esperanza had been her home for 3 years, but this cramped transport felt like a coffin compared to the massive vessel they'd left behind in orbit. Around them, 200 other colonists sat strapped into their seats, faces pale with a mixture of excitement and terror. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. "Approaching landing zone Alpha. All passengers prepare for touchdown in T-2 minutes." Through the viewports, Sarah could see other transports descending like silver teardrops against the alien sky. The first wave of humanity's newest colony world was about to begin. Earth's population had reached 12 billion and resources were running thin. Kepler 442b represented hope, a chance for humanity to spread among the stars and ensure their species' survival. The transport touched, down with a bone-jarring thud that sent several passengers lurching forward against their restraints. Emma giggled at the impact, her child's resilience already adapting to their new reality. The engines wound down with a dying whine, and gradually, the cabin filled with the sounds of colonists unbuckling themselves and gathering their meager possessions. "Welcome to New Eden," the pilot announced, though his voice carried little enthusiasm. "Current local time is 1430 hours. External temperature is holding steady at 22 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric composition is confirmed safe for human habitation. Please exit in an orderly fashion and report to the temporary command center for assignment processing." Sarah helped Emma collect her backpack, a worn thing containing the girl's most precious possessions. A stuffed rabbit named Mr. Buttons, a tablet loaded with educational games, and a small wooden box that had belonged to her father. Thomas Chen had died in the factory accident that had ultimately driven Sarah to sign up for the colony program. A fresh start on a new world seemed like the only way to escape the grief that haunted every corner of their old life. The airlock hissed open, and Sarah took her first breath of alien air. It tasted faintly metallic, with an underlying sweetness that reminded her of honeysuckle. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like a gentle bounce. Emma immediately took advantage of this, hopping down the transport's ramp with delighted laughter. The landing zone buzzed with activity. Prefabricated structures were being assembled by construction mechs, their mechanical arms working with precise efficiency. Cargo containers stacked 20 feet high created temporary walls around the growing settlement. Men and women in military uniforms directed traffic with practiced authority, their plasma rifles slung casually across their backs. But it was the perimeter that caught Sarah's attention and sent a chill down her spine. Massive creatures patrolled the edges of the landing zone, each one the size of a small building. They moved on 6 powerful legs, their hide a mottled black and gray that seemed to absorb light. Spinal ridges ran along their backs, ending in a crown of bone spikes around massive skulls. Their eyes glowed with an inner fire, orange embers that tracked every movement within the settlement. "Those are Korthak Warbeasts," explained Colonel Martinez as he approached Sarah's group. The man was built like a tank, his face scarred from some long-ago battle. The Galactic Council provided them for perimeter security. Nothing on this planet is stupid enough to challenge a fully grown Korthak. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mommy, they look like dinosaurs." Colonel Martinez chuckled, but the sound held no warmth. "Dinosaurs with military training, kid. Each one of those beasts has an IQ roughly equivalent to a human teenager, plus natural weapons that can punch through tank armor. They're bred for war and conditioned for absolute loyalty to their handlers." Sarah watched as one of the handlers, a tall, thin alien with blue-tinted skin and 4 arms, approached one of the beasts. The creature immediately lowered its massive head in submission, allowing the handler to check some kind of neural interface device attached behind its ear. The alien's movements were confident, almost casual, as if dealing with a house cat rather than a living weapon. "The Vorthak have been training war beasts for over 3,000 years, Colonel Martinez continued. "It's what got them a seat on the Galactic Council in the first place. Nobody breeds better war animals. As they spoke, more transports continued landing, disgorging their human cargo onto the alien soil. The temporary settlement was growing by the hour, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were insects building their nest in the shadow of giants. The warbeasts made her skin crawl, not just because of their size and obvious lethality, but because of the intelligence in those burning eyes. They were watching, evaluating, remembering. Emma, however, seemed fascinated by the creatures. She'd stopped listening to the adults and was staring intently at the nearest warbeast, a particularly massive specimen with scars crisscrossing its hide. The beast noticed her attention and turned its great head in her direction. For a moment, child and monster regarded each other across the distance. "Emma, don't stare," Sarah whispered, pulling her daughter closer. But Emma wasn't listening. She raised one small hand and waved at the creature. To Sarah's amazement, the warbeast's eyes seemed to soften slightly, and it made a low rumbling sound deep in its chest, not threatening, but almost curious. The moment was broken when the beast's handler approached, clicking and whistling in the complex Vorthak language. The creature immediately turned away, resuming its patrol with mechanical precision. "Interesting," Colonel Martinez muttered, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma. "That's the first time I've seen one of those things react to a colonist. Usually they ignore us completely unless we get too close to the perimeter." Sarah felt a flutter of unease in her stomach. The last thing she wanted was for Emma to attract unwanted attention, especially from creatures designed to kill. They were here to build a new life, not to become some alien military experiment. As they were processed through the command center and assigned their temporary quarters, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about that moment of connection between her daughter and the warbeast. Emma chattered excitedly about their new home, but Sarah's mind kept returning to those intelligent orange eyes and the way they had focused on her child with what almost seemed like recognition. 3 weeks into their new life on New Eden, Sarah had fallen into a routine that helped mask her growing anxiety. Each morning, she reported to the hydroponics bay where she worked alongside other colonists to establish food production systems. Emma attended the makeshift school in Habitat Module C, where 23 children of various ages learned together in a single room. The settlement had grown rapidly. What started as a collection of prefab structures now resembled a small town, complete with workshops, a medical center, and even a recreation facility. The warbeasts still patrolled the perimeter, their massive forms casting long shadows across the settlement during the early morning and late evening hours. Sarah tried to convince herself that everything was normal, but Emma's behavior suggested otherwise. Her daughter had become obsessed with the creatures, spending every free moment watching them from the safety of the inner compound. She'd filled her tablet with drawings of the beasts, sketching them from memory with startling accuracy. More concerning was the way Emma talked about them, not as dangerous animals, but as individuals with personalities and emotions. "The big one with the scar likes to watch the sunset," Emma announced over dinner, spooning synthesized protein paste into her mouth without complaint. "And the gray one with the white patches always checks the north gate twice. I think she's more careful than the others." "Emma, they're just animals following their training," Sarah replied, though she kept her voice gentle. "You shouldn't anthropomorphize them." "What does that word mean?" "It means giving human qualities to things that aren't human." Emma considered this seriously, her 8-year-old mind working through the concept. "But Mommy, they do have feelings. I can see it in their eyes. The scared one doesn't like loud noises, and the young one wants to play but can't because of his job." Sarah exchanged a worried glance with their neighbor, Dr. Kim Nakamura, who had joined them for the evening meal. The xenobiologist had become a close friend during their journey from Earth, and her expertise had proven invaluable in helping the colonists understand their new environment. "Emma makes an interesting point," Dr. Nakamura said carefully. "My preliminary scans suggest the warbeasts have highly developed neural structures. Their brain-to-body mass ratio is actually higher than most Earth mammals." "But they're trained killing machines," Sarah protested. "Colonel Martinez made that very clear." "Training doesn't eliminate intelligence," Dr. Nakamura replied. "If anything, effective military conditioning requires sophisticated cognitive abilities. The Vorthak wouldn't waste resources on mindless beasts when they could create thinking weapons." That night, Sarah lay awake in their small habitat pod, listening to Emma's steady breathing from the adjacent bunk. Outside, she could hear the distant rumble of Warbeast communications, deep, resonant calls that carried across the settlement like whale songs. The sounds had a strange rhythm to them, almost like conversation. The next morning brought an incident that changed everything. Sarah was working in the hydroponics bay when the emergency klaxon sounded. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see colonists running toward the shelter bunkers. In the distance, something was moving through the purple forest, something large and fast. Colonel Martinez's voice echoed through the settlement's speakers. All colonists to emergency shelters immediately. We have multiple bogies approaching from the northeast. This is not a drill. Sarah sprinted toward the school module, her heart pounding with terror. The shelter protocols were clear. Children would be evacuated first, but she needed to know Emma was safe. As she rounded the corner of the communications center, she saw something that stopped her in her tracks. A pack of native predators had somehow penetrated the perimeter. They were massive insectoid creatures with razor-sharp mandibles and legs that moved in disturbing coordination. Their chitinous shells gleamed with a metallic sheen, and their compound eyes reflected the settlement's lights like broken mirrors. There were at least a dozen of them, each one the size of a small vehicle. The warbeasts had responded immediately, forming a defensive line between the predators and the settlement. But something was wrong. One of the handlers, a young Vorthak named Zeketh, lay motionless near the communications array, his neural control device sparking and smoking from some kind of feedback surge. Without their handler, 3 of the warbeasts had frozen in place, their training protocols apparently disrupted. The predators sensed the weakness and pressed their attack, their mandibles clicking with anticipation. That's when Sarah saw Emma. Her daughter had somehow escaped from the school module and was standing just outside the main shelter entrance. But instead of running for safety, Emma was walking steadily toward the confused warbeasts. Sarah wanted to scream, to run, to do anything except watch helplessly as her 8-year-old daughter approached creatures that could crush her without effort. Emma, no, Sarah shouted, but her voice was lost in the chaos of battle. The largest warbeast, the scarred one Emma had been watching, turned its massive head toward the approaching child. Its orange eyes flickered with confusion and something that might have been recognition. The creature took a step backward, its entire posture changing from aggressive to uncertain. Emma stopped just within reach of the beast's massive claws and looked up into its burning eyes. Sarah was too far away to hear what her daughter said, but she could see Emma's lips moving. Whatever the words were, their effect was immediate and dramatic. The warbeast's head lowered until it was at Emma's eye level. The creature's enormous body settled into a sitting position, like an obedient dog responding to a familiar command. The other 2 confused beasts saw this behavior and immediately copied it, their own training protocols apparently reactivating. But now they weren't following Vorthak commands. They were following Emma. The little girl raised her hand and pointed toward the attacking predators. Her voice carried across the settlement, clear and commanding despite her age. Protect. The 3 warbeasts exploded into motion with a fury that shook the ground. They tore into the predator pack with devastating efficiency, their training and natural weapons combining in a display of controlled violence that ended the threat in less than 60 seconds. When the last predator fell, the creatures returned to Emma's side and waited. Sarah reached her daughter just as Colonel Martinez and a team of Marines arrived on the scene. The military personnel stared in shock at the sight of 3 warbeasts sitting calmly around an 8-year-old human child like oversized pets. "How did you do that?" Colonel Martinez asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma looked up at the adults with the matter-of-fact expression that only children could manage. "I asked them nicely. They were scared without their friend, so I helped them remember what to do." Dr. Nakamura approached slowly, her scanner already out and taking readings. "This is impossible. The neural conditioning should prevent them from responding to non-Vorthak commands. The genetic markers, the pheromone signatures, the vocal patterns, everything should be wrong." But Emma just smiled and reached up to pat the scarred warbeast's massive snout. The creature leaned into her touch, making that same curious rumbling sound Sarah had heard on their first day. As word spread through the settlement, Sarah realized that everything had changed. Her daughter had somehow accomplished something that should have been biologically impossible, and the implications were staggering. In a galaxy where military might was measured by the loyalty of warbeasts, Emma had just demonstrated an ability that could shift the balance of power among the stars. The question was, what would the Galactic Council do when they learned that a human child could command their most powerful weapons with nothing more than kindness? The Galactic Council's response came swifter than anyone expected. Within 48 hours of the incident, a massive dreadnought appeared in New Eden's orbit, its hull bristling with weapons that could reduce the entire colony to ash in minutes. Sarah watched from the observation deck as sleek shuttles descended like metallic vultures, carrying representatives from 6 different species. Emma sat beside her mother, seemingly oblivious to the tension that gripped every adult in the settlement. The 3 warbeasts that had bonded with her remained close, having refused all attempts by their original handlers to reassert control. They formed a protective triangle around the observation deck, their orange eyes scanning the approaching shuttles with obvious suspicion. "I don't understand why everyone's so worried," Emma said, swinging her legs from the too-high chair. "The big kitties just wanted someone to be nice to them." Sarah almost smiled despite her fear. Emma had started calling the warbeasts kitties after noticing how they purred when content. It was a disturbingly accurate observation. The massive creatures did share behavioral traits with domestic cats, including an apparent need for affection and approval. Colonel Martinez entered the deck, his face grim. "The delegation has landed. They're requesting immediate audience with the child." He paused, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Sarah, I need you to understand. We're dealing with powers that could wipe out human expansion with a single vote. The Vorthak are demanding answers, and they're not known for their patience." "Emma is 8 years old," Sarah replied, her voice sharp with protective anger. "She's not some weapon to be studied and dissected." "I know that, but try explaining it to a species that spent millennia believing they were the only ones capable of bonding with warbeasts. This isn't just about Emma anymore, it's about humanity's place in the galaxy." Dr. Nakamura approached, tablet in hand and expression troubled. "I've been analyzing the neural scans from the incident. The warbeasts show unprecedented brain activity patterns when they're near Emma. It's as if their conditioning is being overwritten by something else entirely." "What kind of something else?" Sarah asked. "That's what scares me." "The readings suggest empathic resonance, a direct emotional connection that bypasses their training protocols. If Emma can do this, if humans have this ability..." She trailed off, but the implications hung heavy in the air. The delegation meeting was held in the settlement's largest conference room, hastily expanded to accommodate representatives from multiple species. Sarah held Emma's hand tightly as they entered, trying to project calm for her daughter's sake. The child showed no fear, only curiosity about the strange beings gathered around the table. The Vorthak representative, Ambassador Kethavor, dominated the room with his imposing presence. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, his blue-scaled skin seemed to ripple with barely contained aggression. His forearms moved in constant agitated gestures as he spoke in the universal translator's monotone voice. "This human child has violated sacred protocols established over 3 millennia. The warbeasts are the foundation of galactic security, bred and trained exclusively by Vorthak bloodlines. No other species has ever demonstrated command capability." A crystalline being that Sarah recognized as a Silex elder chimed with harmonic frequencies that the translator rendered as precise, analytical words. "The implications extend beyond protocol violation. If humans possess natural empathic abilities with trained military assets, it represents a significant shift in galactic power balance." Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Mommy, why is the blue man so angry? Did I do something wrong?" The question seemed to catch the delegation off guard. Ambassador Kethavor's aggressive posturing faltered slightly as he looked down at the small human child. For a moment his expression almost seemed confused. Sarah knelt beside Emma's chair. "No, sweetheart. You helped when people were in danger. That's never wrong." A new voice entered the conversation, deep, resonant, and speaking without technological assistance. "Perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly." All eyes turned to the speaker, a massive figure that had remained silent until now. The Korthak ambassador was arguably the most feared being in the room, representing a warrior species that had conquered half the galaxy before joining the council. His rock-like hide was scarred from countless battles, and his eyes glowed with the same inner fire as the Warbeast's. Great Korthak. You honor us with your words, Ambassador Kethivor said, his forearms crossing in what Sarah recognized as a gesture of respect. Tell me, small human, the Korthak ambassador rumbled, focusing on Emma. How did you know what the Warbeast needed? Emma looked up at the towering figure without any sign of intimidation. They were scared. Their friend got hurt and they didn't know what to do. I just told them it was okay and asked them to help protect everyone. And they listened. Of course they listened. Everyone wants to help when you ask nicely. The Korthak ambassador made a sound that might have been laughter. Everyone wants to help when you ask nicely, he repeated thoughtfully. How long has it been since someone asked a Warbeast nicely to do anything? Ambassador Kethivor's translator crackled with agitation. The conditioning protocols ensure absolute obedience. Politeness is irrelevant to military efficiency, is it? The Korthak's glowing eyes fixed on the Vorthak representative. Tell me, Kethivor, when did your people last ask a Warbeast what it wanted? When did you last consider that creatures intelligent enough for military training might also be intelligent enough for autonomous thought? The room fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Sarah realized that something profound was happening, a fundamental challenge to assumptions that had shaped galactic civilization for thousands of years. Dr. Nakamura cleared her throat nervously. If I may, honored delegates, my research suggests that human empathic abilities might be more common than initially believed. We've documented similar bonding behaviors with Earth animals throughout our history. It's possible that what we're seeing with Emma represents a natural extension of those abilities. You're suggesting, the Silex elder chimed, that humans might be able to form empathic bonds with any sufficiently intelligent species? The possibility exists. Our preliminary data suggests that Emma isn't commanding the Warbeast so much as communicating with them on an emotional level. She's not overriding their conditioning, she's appealing to something deeper. Emma, who had been listening with the intense concentration that children reserved for important adult conversations, suddenly spoke up. Can I show you something? Before anyone could object, she slipped away from Sarah and walked toward the room's exit. The adults followed, emerging into the late afternoon sunlight where the three bonded Warbeasts waited patiently. Emma approached the largest one, the scarred veteran that had been the first to respond to her. She placed her small hand on its massive snout and looked back at the assembled delegates. His name is Valor, she announced. He's been fighting for a very long time and he's tired. He dreams about running through forests without having to watch for enemies. He wants to have babies someday and teach them to be brave but not mean. The Warbeast made a soft rumbling sound and gently nuzzled Emma's hair. Around them, the delegation stared in stunned silence. Emma moved to the second creature. This is Hope. She's younger and still scared sometimes, but she's very smart. She likes to solve puzzles and wishes she could learn to read. The third Warbeast received similar attention. And this is Thunder. He's the strongest, but he uses his strength to protect others. He's never hurt anyone who didn't hurt innocents first. As Emma spoke, each creature responded with sounds and gestures that seemed to confirm her words. The delegation watched in amazement as the little girl demonstrated a level of interspecies communication that their most advanced technologies couldn't achieve. The Korthak ambassador stepped forward, his massive form casting Emma in shadow. Child, would you be willing to demonstrate this ability with other species? Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. Are they nice? Some are. Some are not. But all deserve to be understood. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what was being suggested. The galactic community was asking her 8-year-old daughter to become a bridge between species that had never truly communicated before. The responsibility was staggering, the potential consequences immeasurable. But as she watched Emma smile up at the alien warrior, Sarah realized that her daughter might be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Not through military might or technological advancement, but through the simple power of empathy and understanding. 6 months after first contact with the Galactic Council delegation, New Eden had transformed from a struggling colony into something unprecedented, a testing ground for interspecies empathy. Representatives from dozens of civilizations had arrived to study Emma's abilities, turning the settlement into an impromptu embassy. For half the galaxy, Sarah watched from her expanded office window as her daughter played in the compound's central garden with what could only be described as the galaxy's most unusual playmates. Valor, Hope, and Thunder had never left Emma's side, but they'd been joined by other creatures that defied conventional wisdom about interspecies relationships. A crystalline sphinx from the Rigel system lay curled around Emma like a glowing cat, its faceted surface refracting rainbow patterns across the garden. Nearby, a young void crawler, normally one of the most feared predators in known space, sat perfectly still while Emma braided ribbons through its sensory tendrils. The creature's usual black coloration had shifted to soft blues and greens, colors that xenobiologists had never documented before. The Tremaine Collective has sent another delegation request, Dr. Nakamura announced, entering Sarah's office with a tablet full of diplomatic correspondence. They're offering exclusive trading rights for 30 star systems in exchange for 6 months of Emma's time. Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. She's not a commodity to be traded, Kim. She's my daughter. I know that. But Sarah, you need to understand what's happening here. Emma isn't just communicating with these creatures. She's fundamentally changing them. The Void Crawler hasn't eaten meat since it bonded with her. It's been surviving on energy crystals and seems perfectly healthy. The Vorthak are having philosophical crises because their Warbeasts are starting to question orders. Through the window, Sarah could see Ambassador Kethavor in deep conversation with several human xenopsychologists. The Vorthak had remained on New Eden far longer than originally planned, seemingly unable to comprehend how a child had undone millennia of careful conditioning with nothing more than kindness. Dr. Chen, you have a visitor, came the voice of Sarah's assistant through the intercom. The door opened to admit a figure that made Sarah's breath catch. The newcomer stood nearly 8 feet tall with skin that seemed to absorb light and eyes like burning coals. This was a Shadowkin, one of the galaxy's most mysterious and feared species. They rarely interacted with other civilizations, preferring to observe from the darkness between stars. I am Nexus Prime Vashatai, the being said, its voice like distant thunder. I have come regarding the human child. Sarah stood slowly, her protective instincts flaring. Emma is in the garden. She's playing with her friends. I know where she is. I have been watching her for some time. The Shadowkin moved with fluid grace to the window, its presence somehow making the room feel colder. Your species intrigues us, Dr. Chen. We have observed countless civilizations rise and fall, but none have demonstrated such unusual gifts. What do you want with my daughter? Vashatai turned those burning eyes toward Sarah. Want? An interesting concept. The Shadowkin do not want in the way other species understand the term. We observe, we learn, we preserve knowledge for the cosmic cycles yet to come. That doesn't answer my question. Your daughter possesses an ability that could reshape galactic civilization. The empathic resonance she demonstrates transcends known biological limitations. She connects with creatures on a level that bypasses evolutionary barriers, genetic incompatibility, even fundamental differences in neural architecture. Dr. Nakamura leaned forward intently. You're suggesting this isn't just about understanding. She's actually changing the creatures she bonds with? The evidence is overwhelming. The Void Crawler's dietary shift, the Warbeast's emotional awakening, the crystalline Sphinx's newfound playfulness. Each creature that bonds with the child becomes something new, something that retains its essential nature while gaining capacities that should be impossible. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Shadowkin's presence. You're talking about her like she's some kind of weapon. Not a weapon. An evolutionary catalyst. Your daughter may represent the next step in galactic consciousness. The ability to unite disparate species through empathic connection, rather than conquest or diplomacy. Through the window, they could see Emma approaching with her unusual entourage. She waved cheerfully at the adults, oblivious to the weight of their conversation. The creatures around her moved with obvious affection, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of purrs, chimes, and harmonic vibrations. She's just a little girl who's kind to animals, Sarah said desperately. No, Vashatai replied with certainty. She is something unprecedented, and that makes her incredibly valuable and incredibly dangerous. Before Sarah could ask what that meant, Emma burst through the door with her characteristic enthusiasm. Mommy, Thunder learned a new trick and the pretty light cat wants to show you something. And she stopped mid-sentence as she noticed the Shadowkin. For a moment, Child and ancient being regarded each other in silence. Emma's expression shifted from surprise to curiosity to something that looked almost like recognition. "You're very old," she said simply, "and very sad." Vashti's burning eyes flickered with what might have been surprise. "I am Nexus Prime of the Shadowkin Collective. I have existed for 7,000 of your years." "That's a long time to be alone." Emma stepped closer, showing no fear of the imposing figure. "Why don't you have any friends?" "My species observes. We do not socialize." Emma tilted her head with the same expression she'd shown when first meeting the Warbeasts. "But you want to. I can feel it." "You're tired of just watching." The Shadowkin took a step backward, its composure cracking slightly. "That is, not relevant to my purpose here." "Everyone needs friends," Emma said with the absolute certainty that only children possessed. "Even really old, scary-looking people who live in the dark." She reached out her hand toward Vashti. The Shadowkin stared at the small gesture as if it were incomprehensible. "Emma, no," Sarah warned, moving to intercept her daughter. But the Shadowkin raised a hand to stop her. Slowly, almost hesitantly, Vashti extended one long, shadow-wreathed finger to touch Emma's palm. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Light erupted from the point of contact, not blinding but warm and golden like sunrise. The Shadowkin's form shifted. The absolute darkness of its skin giving way to deep purples and blues shot through with veins of silver light. Its burning eyes softened to the warm glow of embers. "Impossible," Dr. Nakamura whispered. Vashti stared at its transformed hand in amazement. "I can feel warmth. Not thermal energy, but something else. Something I had forgotten existed." Emma smiled up at the being. "See, much better. Now you don't look so lonely." The Shadowkin knelt slowly until it was at Emma's eye level. "Child, do you understand what you have done? My species abandoned emotional connection eons ago. We chose observation over participation, knowledge over feeling. You have returned something we thought lost forever. I just helped you remember that being alone isn't the same as being safe." Emma replied, patting the being's transformed cheek. "Sometimes you have to risk feeling sad to feel happy too." Sarah watched in amazement as one of the galaxy's most feared species knelt before her 8-year-old daughter like a supplicant before a goddess. Around them, Emma's other bonded creatures began to approach, apparently accepting the Shadowkin into their strange family. But even as Sarah marveled at her daughter's gift, she couldn't shake Vashti's earlier words. Emma was valuable and dangerous. As word of this latest transformation spread through the galactic community, how long would it be before someone decided that controlling her was more important than protecting her? The answer came sooner than Sarah feared. As evening fell over New Eden, sensors detected multiple ships entering the system. Not the diplomatic vessels they'd grown accustomed to, but military craft bearing the insignia of the hegemony worlds. The war for humanity's future was about to begin, and it would be fought not with weapons but for the heart and soul of one remarkable child. The hegemony fleet descended on New Eden like a plague of metal locusts, their warships blotting out the binary stars as they achieved orbital dominance. Sarah held Emma close as emergency sirens wailed throughout the settlement, watching through reinforced windows as drop pods began their fiery descent toward the colony. "Mommy, who are those people?" Emma asked, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay." Sarah tried to keep the fear out of her voice, but she could feel her daughter's unusual sensitivity picking up on her emotions. The hegemony worlds represented the galaxy's most aggressive expansionist faction, a coalition of militaristic species that believed in conquest through superior firepower. They had been conspicuously absent from the diplomatic gatherings on New Eden, and their sudden arrival spelled trouble for everyone. Colonel Martinez burst into the emergency shelter, his face grim. "They're not responding to any communication attempts. Scans show at least 3 different species in those ships: Krell shock troops, Nexari battle scions, and something else we can't identify." Ambassador Kethavor's forearms gestured in agitation. "The hegemony has no authority here. This world falls under Galactic Council protection." "Try telling them that," Martinez replied. "They've already disabled our communication array and established a perimeter around the settlement." Through the shelter's reinforced walls, they could hear the distinctive sound of heavy machinery moving into position. The Krell were setting up siege equipment, preparing for a prolonged occupation rather than a quick strike. Whatever they wanted, they intended to take their time getting it. Vashitai emerged from the shadows near the shelter's rear wall. The Shadowkin's transformed appearance still startling to those who remembered its previous form. They have come for the child. The hegemony believes her abilities can be weaponized, turned into a tool for galactic domination. Over my dead body, Sarah snarled, her protective instincts flaring. That may be precisely what they have in mind, the Shadowkin replied grimly. The hegemony does not share. They take what they want and eliminate obstacles. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Where are my friends? The question sent a chill through everyone present. In the chaos of the invasion, no one had thought about the creatures that had bonded with Emma. Valor, Hope, and Thunder were somewhere outside the shelter, along with the Void Crawler, the Crystalline Sphinx, and several other beings that had formed connections with the remarkable child. Dr. Nakamura checked her scanner frantically. I'm picking up massive biosignatures moving toward the settlement perimeter. It looks like... Oh my God, what is it? Martinez demanded, the bonded creatures. They're not fleeing, they're converging on our location. All of them. Through the shelter's small observation port, Sarah could see shapes moving through the purple twilight. Valor led the charge, his massive form thundering across the settlement's central plaza with Hope and Thunder flanking him. Behind them came creatures that had never worked together before, predators and prey species united by their connection to one small human girl. The first Krell patrol never knew what hit them. Valor's massive claws tore through their powered armor like paper, while Hope's agility allowed her to strike from unexpected angles. Thunder lived up to his name, his roar shaking buildings as he charged through enemy positions. But it was the coordination that truly amazed the observers. The Void Crawler used its natural phase-shifting abilities to transport the Crystalline Sphinx behind enemy lines, where the creature's light-based attacks could blind and disorient the invaders. A pack of native predators that had bonded with Emma worked in perfect synchronization with off-world species that should have been natural enemies. Impossible, Ambassador Kethfor whispered. Cross-species tactical coordination of this complexity requires years of training and neural conditioning. Emma didn't train them, Sarah realized. She connected them. They're not just fighting for her, they're fighting as extensions of her will. The battle raged for hours, but gradually the tide began to turn against the defenders. The hegemony forces were too numerous and too well equipped. The bonded creatures fought with incredible ferocity, but they were taking casualties. Sarah watched in horror as Thunder fell to concentrated plasma fire, his massive body shielding a group of smaller creatures from the deadly beams. Emma cried out as if she'd been physically struck. Thunder! She sobbed, her small fists pressed against the observation port. That's when something extraordinary happened. The fallen Warbeast's body began to glow with the same golden light that had transformed Vashitai. The light spread to every creature connected to Emma, and suddenly their movements became faster, more coordinated, more purposeful. Evolutionary catalyst, Vashitai murmured. The child is not just connecting with them, she is elevating them, making them more than they were. The enhanced creatures pressed their counterattack with renewed vigor. Valor seemed to anticipate enemy movements before they happened. Hope moved with impossible grace, dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable. Even Thunder, badly wounded but not defeated, fought with strategic intelligence that no animal training could explain. But the real surprise came when the hegemony's secret weapon finally revealed itself. A massive ship descended through the atmosphere, its hull covered in neural interface ports and psionic amplifiers. From its belly emerged something that made even the veteran warriors in the shelter gasp in horror. It was a Titan class war construct, a living weapon grown from modified Krell genetics and enhanced with cybernetic implants. Standing 50 feet tall, it was designed to break enemy morale through sheer intimidation. Its roar could shatter reinforced glass, and its weapons could level city blocks. The creature was everything that Emma's bonded animals were not. Brutal, mindless, shaped by technology rather than connection. It represented the hegemony's philosophy made manifest: power through domination, control through fear. Emma watched the Titan advance on her friends, and for the first time since the invasion began, Sarah saw fear in her daughter's eyes. But it wasn't fear for herself, it was fear for the creature she loved. I have to help them, Emma said quietly. No, Sarah replied firmly. "You're staying right here where it's safe." But Emma was already moving toward the shelter's exit. "They need me, Mommy. Thunder is hurt, and the big scary thing is going to hurt everyone else too." Sarah grabbed for her daughter, but Emma slipped through her grasp with a child's natural agility. The shelter door hissed open, and before anyone could stop her, Emma was running toward the battle raging outside. "Emma!" Sarah screamed, but her daughter was already gone. A small figure racing across the war-torn settlement toward a confrontation that would determine not just her fate, but the future of interspecies relations throughout the galaxy. The Titan-class war construct turned its massive head toward the approaching child, its weapon systems locking onto the tiny target. But as Emma ran, something impossible began to happen. The golden light that had enhanced her bonded creatures began to emanate from her own small form, growing brighter with each step. She wasn't running away from the monster. She was running toward it, and she was bringing the full power of her unique gift to bear. Emma ran across the battlefield like a beacon of light in the darkness, her small form radiating that impossible golden glow that seemed to touch everything around her. The Titan-class war construct focused its massive weapon systems on the approaching child, but something was wrong with its targeting computers. Every time it tried to lock onto Emma, the systems glitched and reset. Sarah burst from the shelter despite Colonel Martinez's attempts to restrain her, running after her daughter with a mother's desperate fury. Around them, the battle continued to rage, but she only had eyes for Emma, her brave, impossible daughter who was about to face down a 50-foot killing machine with nothing but her gift for understanding. The Titan fired, its plasma cannons unleashing devastating beams that should have vaporized Emma instantly, but the golden light around her seemed to bend reality itself. The deadly energy passed harmlessly around her, as if the universe itself was protecting this one remarkable child. As Emma approached the towering war construct, she did something that no military strategist could have predicted. She stopped running and simply stood there, looking up at the massive creature with the same curious expression she'd shown when first meeting Valor. "You're in pain," she said, her young voice somehow carrying across the battlefield despite the chaos surrounding them. The Titan hesitated, its weapon system cycling down as if responding to some unheard command. For the first time since its creation, the living weapon seemed uncertain. Sarah reached Emma just as her daughter extended her small hand toward the Titan's massive foot. "Emma, don't..." But it was too late. Emma's fingers touched the creature's armored hide, and the golden light exploded outward like a supernova. The Titan's roar of aggression transformed into something else entirely, a sound of anguish, of confusion, of awakening consciousness. Through their cybernetic links, every hegemony soldier suddenly experienced what their ultimate weapon was feeling. For the first time in its existence, the Titan was thinking for itself, and what it discovered filled it with horror. It saw its own hands covered in blood, remembered the civilizations it had helped destroy, felt the weight of atrocities committed in the name of galactic expansion. "I remember," the Titan said, its voice like distant thunder. "I remember what I was before they changed me. I was like them." It looked down at Emma's bonded creatures, recognition dawning in its massive eyes. "I was free." The war construct took a step backward, its massive frame shaking with newfound emotion. "Little one, what have you done to me?" "I helped you remember who you were meant to be," Emma replied simply. "Before they made you forget." Across the battlefield, the hegemony forces began to falter. Their ultimate weapon had not only ceased its attack, but was now kneeling before a human child, its massive head lowered in a gesture of submission that sent shockwaves through their ranks. But Emma wasn't finished. The golden light continued to spread, touching every living thing within its reach. Hegemony soldiers found their weapons feeling heavy in their hands as empathy flooded through their consciousness. For the first time, they truly understood the fear and pain they had inflicted on others. The Krell shock troops, bred for aggression and violence, began to question orders they had never thought to challenge. The Nexari battle scions, their minds enhanced for tactical thinking, suddenly saw the logical flaws in conquest-based expansion. Even the shipbound commanders felt the weight of Emma's gift reaching across space to touch their consciousness. General Threxmore, supreme commander of the hegemony fleet, materialized on the battlefield via emergency transport, his massive Krell frame bristling with weapons and rage. Enough! I will not be defeated by some human child and her pet animals. He raised his plasma rifle toward Emma, but before he could fire, every bonded creature on the battlefield moved as one. Valor placed himself between the general and Emma, while Hope and Thunder flanked the Krell warrior. The Void Crawler phased into existence behind him, and the crystalline Sphinx began to charge its energy beams. But most shocking of all was the Titan-class war construct, which slowly stood to its full height and turned its weapon systems toward its former commander. "You will not harm the small one," it rumbled, its voice carrying newfound resolve. "I remember now what it means to choose, and I choose to protect rather than destroy." General Threxmore looked around at the impossible scene, his own ultimate weapon defending a human child, his soldiers laying down their arms, his carefully planned invasion crumbling because of one little girl's gift for empathy. "This is not possible. You are all conditioned for obedience." "Conditioning can be overcome," said a new voice from the shadows. Vashti emerged into the light, the transformed Shadowkin now radiating the same golden glow that surrounded Emma. "Your species has spent so long focusing on control that you forgot the power of choice." More figures began to appear around the battlefield. Galactic Council representatives who had been studying Emma's abilities for months, human colonists who had witnessed her gift firsthand, and even some hegemony soldiers who had been touched by her empathic field. They formed a circle around Emma, not to protect her but to bear witness to what she represented. Ambassador Kethvor stepped forward, his forearms spread in a gesture of formal declaration. "By the authority vested in me by the Galactic Council, I hereby recognize the human species as possessing unique abilities essential to galactic peace and prosperity. Any attempt to weaponize or control these abilities will be considered an act of war against all member species." The Korthak ambassador emerged from his own ship, having arrived during the battle's climax. "The warrior clans concur. We have seen strength in protection rather than conquest, and we find this acceptable." Even the crystalline Silex elder chimed with harmonic approval. "The mathematics of empathy create more stable equations than the calculus of domination. We support this recognition." General Threxmore found himself isolated, his fleet surrounded by council ships that had appeared as if from nowhere. His soldiers were laying down their weapons. His ultimate weapon had turned against him, and his entire philosophy of conquest was crumbling before a child who had never raised a hand in violence. "This changes nothing," he snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. Emma walked toward him, her small hand extended. "It changes everything. You don't have to be angry anymore. You can choose to be something better." For a moment, the general hesitated. Sarah could see the conflict in his eyes, millennia of conditioning warring against the growing light of Emma's gift. His hand began to reach toward hers, then he pulled back, his conditioning reasserting itself. "Never. The hegemony does not yield to weakness." "Then the hegemony yields to strength," rumbled the Titan, its massive hand descending to gently cup Emma. "And this child has shown us what true strength looks like." As the general was taken into custody by council forces, Emma looked up at her mother with tired but happy eyes. "Mommy, can we go home now? I think everyone understands each other better now." Sarah gathered her daughter into her arms, marveling at the child who had just prevented a galactic war with nothing more than kindness and understanding. Around them, the most diverse collection of species in galactic history began the process of building something new. Not an empire based on conquest, but a true community based on mutual respect and empathy. Emma fell asleep in her mother's arms as the binary sun set over New Eden, her breathing steady and peaceful. She had no idea that her simple act of asking a Warbeast to sit would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned that true power came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to understand. In the years that followed, Emma's gift would spread throughout human space and beyond. Not everyone possessed her level of empathic ability, but her example showed that connection was possible between any species willing to approach others with openness and respect. The galaxy began to heal from millennia of conflict, one understanding heart at a time, and somewhere in the growing darkness between stars, other civilizations watched and wondered if they too might find the courage to set aside their weapons and reach out with open hands instead of closed fists. The age of the Warbeasts was ending. The age of true understanding had begun.